In the land of Seravel, a kingdom once renowned for its endless fields of golden wheat and its crystal-clear rivers, there had been peace for 1,000 years. But that peace came with a price. Far to the north, beyond the mountains that framed the kingdom, there lay a place untouched by light, a region known only as the Veil. No one knew what truly lay beyond it, only that centuries ago, the kingdom's greatest mages had sealed it away, believing that what was hidden there should remain so for eternity. At the heart of Seravel stood the capital city of Averis, its white stone walls glimmering under the sun. The great spire, a towering monument to the kingdom's ancient rulers, stretched toward the heavens. In this city lived Elise, a young woman who had always felt that she didn't belong. Elise was the daughter of a respected noble family, but she was different from the others in her station. While most nobles indulged in the luxuries of the court, Elise spent her time studying ancient texts and exploring forgotten corners of the kingdom. Her fascination with the past had earned her the nickname the Seeker among her peers, a title that was spoken as much with derision as with admiration. On the day her life changed forever, Elise had been poring over an ancient tome in the Hall of Knowledge, a vast library that housed thousands of scrolls and books from every corner of Seravel. The tome she studied was old, the pages brittle with age, and written in a language that few in the kingdom could still read. It spoke of a lost light, a source of unimaginable power that had once been the lifeblood of Seravel. According to the text, this light had been stolen away and hidden behind the veil, and without it, the kingdom's prosperity would eventually fade. The idea fascinated Elise. She had heard stories of the veil as a child, tales told to frighten young ones into staying close to home. But as she grew older, she realized that those tales held a deeper truth. The veil was real, and whatever lay beyond it was far more dangerous than mere ghost stories. But what if it wasn't only darkness that lay beyond? What if the lost light was real? The thought consumed her. Later that night, Elise lay in bed, her mind racing. The kingdom had thrived for centuries, its people prosperous and content. But recently, subtle changes had begun to creep into the land. The winters were growing longer, the crops not as bountiful as they once were. There were whispers among the farmers that something was wrong with the soil itself, as if the earth had grown weary. And then there were the dreams. For the past several weeks, Elise had been haunted by vivid dreams of a strange place, a land covered in mist where the sun never rose, and shadows moved as if they were alive. In her dreams, she saw a light flickering in the distance, just out of reach, calling to her. It was always the same, a voice, soft but urgent, whispering her name. It felt as if someone was trying to guide her towards something she couldn't yet understand. Elise was certain the dreams were connected to the lost light. She had to find it. The thought of venturing beyond the veil terrified her. But the pull was stronger than her fear. She knew she couldn't do it alone, though. She would need help. The next morning, she made her way to the Citadel of the Sun, the stronghold of Seravel's elite soldiers and mages. It was there that she found Darin, a skilled warrior and her closest friend since childhood. Darin was tall and broad-shouldered, with a sharp mind and a steady hand in battle. His loyalty to Elise was unwavering, and she trusted him with her life. "Darin," she said quietly when she found him training in the courtyard. I need your help. He turned to her, wiping sweat from his brow. What is it, Elise? You look troubled. I've been studying something dangerous but important. She hesitated, knowing how wild her next words would sound. I need to go beyond the veil. For a moment, Darren just stared at her, his expression unreadable. The veil, he repeated. You're serious? Elise nodded. I believe there's something there. Something the kingdom needs. The lost light. I've read about it in the old texts. It's real, Darren. And I think we're meant to find it. Darren sighed and crossed his arms. You realize no one who's gone near the veil has ever returned, right? I know, Elise said softly. But something's happening to Seravel. The land is changing, and not for the better. We need to do something before it's too late. Darren studied her face, and after a long silence, he nodded. All right, he said. If you're going, I'm coming with you. The journey to the veil was long and arduous. Elise and Darren travelled north for weeks, passing through dense forests, vast plains, and finally into the rugged mountain terrain that marked the kingdom's northernmost border. Along the way, they were joined by two others, Kale, a young mage whose knowledge of ancient spells rivaled that of the oldest scholars, and Mira, a skilled tracker who had spent her life navigating the wilds of Seravel. The four of them made a strange company, but they were united in their purpose. Each of them had their own reasons for seeking the lost light, though none more compelling than Elise's. She had not told the others about her dreams. She wasn't sure if they would believe her, but she knew deep down that they were following the right path. After weeks of travel, they finally reached the edge of the veil. It was like nothing Elise had ever seen. The landscape ahead was shrouded in a thick, swirling mist that seemed to swallow all light and sound. The air was cold, unnaturally as so, and the ground beneath their feet felt strange, almost hollow. The boundary between Seravel and the veil was marked by a crumbling stone archway, covered in moss and ancient runes. This is it, Mira said quietly, her voice barely audible over the wind. Beyond here. Who knows what we'll find? Elise stepped forward, her heart pounding. She could feel the pull of the light, stronger now than ever. She glanced back at her companions, all of them tense and alert. Are we ready? She asked. Darren tightened his grip on his sword. Ready as we'll ever be. Kale muttered a quiet spell under his breath, and a faint glow surrounded them, a protective barrier against whatever magic lay ahead. Together, they stepped through the archway and into the veil. The moment they crossed the threshold, the world changed. The air inside the veil was thick and heavy, filled with an unnatural silence. The mist swirled around them, obscuring their vision, and the ground beneath their feet felt soft, almost liquid. There was no sound, no wind, no birds, nothing but the faint whispering of the mist itself. Elise shivered, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders. The pull of the light was stronger now, almost overwhelming. But there was something else here too, a presence, something ancient and malevolent, watching them from the shadows. We need to keep moving, Kale said, his voice barely more than a whisper. Stay close, and don't lose sight of each other. For hours, they walked through the mist, the landscape around them unchanged, The ground seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions, with no landmarks, no signs of life. It was as if the veil had swallowed them whole, trapping them in a place outside of time and space. But Elise could still feel the light, growing closer with every step. Finally, after what felt like days of walking, they reached a vast clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a massive stone structure, ancient and weathered, covered in the same runes as the archway they had passed through. At the top of the structure, a single beam of light flickered faintly, barely visible through the mist. "The lost light," Elise whispered, her heart racing. "We found it." But as they approached the structure, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. The mist swirled violently, and from the shadows, figures began to emerge. Dark, twisted shapes, their faces obscured, their movements unnatural. "The shadows," Mira gasped, drawing her bow. "They are real." Darin unsheathed his sword, his eyes scanning the darkness. "We need to get to that light. Now." Elise didn't need to be told twice. She ran toward the structure, her heart pounding in her chest, the pull of the light guiding her. But the shadows were closing in, their whispers filling the air, their cold hands reaching for her. Kale raised his staff, chanting an incantation, and a burst of light erupted from the ground, scattering the shadows. But it was only a temporary reprieve. The darkness pressed in from all sides, relentless. Elise reached the base of the structure and began to climb, her hands shaking as she pulled herself up the ancient stone. The light was so close now, so close she could almost touch it. But as she neared the top, a voice echoed through the mist. "You should not have come here."